We've been going through the fifth way for the last few months now, I suppose. But I want to take a little break here. We do that during the holidays because we have to get in some other things. And we find ourselves on this Sunday, just a couple days from Thanksgiving, and in a couple more days, it's going to be Giving Tuesday. So we're kind of sandwiched in between receiving and giving. And I was thinking about there's got to be a relationship between the two, a relationship between receiving and giving that we don't want to miss. If we're really going to hit gratitude, and gratitude is a real mile marker along the way. If we're going to hit gratitude, then we need to understand the relationship between receiving and giving. In Mark 10:8, actually Matthew 10:8, Jesus is sending his 12 disciples out, and he has given them the power to be able to heal and to be able to preach and do all the things that they need to do. So to get a wider spread, he sends them all out. And at the end of his commission to them, he says, "Freely you have received, now freely give." This idea of freely giving and freely receiving is the most important part of what he's telling them. If you have freely received something, what does that mean? It means that there are no strings attached to the gift. It's absolutely free. Not only that, if it's freely received, it probably means that it was something that you couldn't give yourself, something that was beyond your capacity to earn, to acquire somehow. And so here it is. Here is this free gift to you. That's going to bring gratitude automatically. But it's going to bring a humility along with it. A gift that you couldn't give yourself that suddenly shows up freely given, that's going to be something that is going to humble you. But it's also going to make you grateful at the same time. It's an automatic response. And then if we freely give to someone who can't repay us, that's why it's so important that this free gift, we are giving to someone, no strings attached. They don't have to repay it. There is no quid pro quo. There's no expectations. It's just freely given. That is the only way that we will ever understand the nature of God's love in our lives, is when we experience it from the other side. Letting something flow from us to someone who may not really deserve it, certainly hasn't earned it, and is never going to repay it. But it is our pleasure to give it anyway. Now we're beginning to understand the nature of the love that is completely showered upon us freely. And to give everything away, as Jesus is constantly telling people, to give everything away that we have, to become completely empty, opens us up to a radical newness that is not possible if we're still filled up. It's not possible if we have other things in the way. This really is the fifth way that we've been talking about. This fifth way that turns all the other four ways of acquisition of the things that we need on their heads and say, you know how you really get what you need? You get it by giving it away. Anything that you want, anything that you think you might possess, you'll never know if you possess it free and clear until you can give it away free and clear. If you can do that, it's yours. But in that giving away, now, and this is the only way that we can come to the Father and have any idea who this Father is. Giving and receiving. In another tradition, in the Zen tradition, there's a great story. There was a Zen monk who was renowned for his wisdom, and people would come to him all the time for guidance and spiritual direction. And so one day, this important government functionary comes, one of those bureaucrats that you love to hate, one of those guys, self-important, used to giving orders, and he shows up at the door of the monk and he says, "Teach me about Zen. Open my mind to enlightenment." And the monk smiles and he says, "Well, this is something I think we're going to have to discuss over tea." So he sits him down and he prepares the tea, and it's his ritual for preparing tea, and it's slow, and he goes through the process, and eventually the tea is ready, and he puts a cup in front of the man and he starts pouring. And he pours, and he pours. And the cup comes up to the brim, and he pours. And then the cup is overflowing onto the table, and he pours. And it runs across the table and off the edge and onto the man's robe, who jumps up and says, "Oh, stop pouring already. What's the matter with you?" He says, can't you see the cup is already full? And the master says to him, you are like the cup. You're so full. Nothing else can get in. Come back to me when your cup is empty. Come back to me with an empty mind. It's the same story. Take a look at those couple quotes on your handouts. One from Suzuki, who is one of the men responsible for bringing Zen to the United States in a big way. He says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. And Epictetus from the ancient Greek wisdom. It is impossible for anyone to begin to learn that which he thinks he already knows. Obvious stuff to us, but how often do we go to try to learn something full of our own preconceptions, full of our own worldview, full of everything that we think we know? And not only that, but absolutely ready, tooth and nail, to defend those things that we think we know. And a lot of this exists on the unconscious level. We're not literally thinking that. But this is what's keeping us from being able to ever accept, to understand something as new, and not simply brand it as heresy, and then be able to dismiss it completely. Jesus teaches exactly the same way here. He's always holding up a child as the emblem of kingdom. Why? Because a child has beginner's mind. What is beginner's mind? Beginner's mind is the mind that you bring to something that you've never seen before, you've never done before. So you're completely open. I mean, think about it. The first time that you skied, the first time that you did anything, you were just a dry sponge, and every drop hit you and expanded because you accepted the fact that you didn't know something and were completely dependent on the master to teach you what it is that you needed to know. Jesus holds up the child as the emblem of kingdom. This is the person who is living kingdom as kingdom is lived. This idea of beginner's mind. Jesus was constantly challenging accepted beliefs because those are the ones that get in the way of something new. Those accepted beliefs that we have just taken on hearsay, taught to us as children, and we have just turned them over, never explored them, never challenged them ourselves. Jesus will do it for you. Absolutely. Anything you bring to Jesus, he is going to challenge. And he uses paradox in order to do it. Paradox, nonsensical sayings, non sequiturs, to be able to just break your line of thinking and take you into a place where your mind just kind of empties out. What? What is he talking about? That's a perfect place for us to start. And this is what contemplation is all about. That's why we push it so hard. That's why Jesus teaches it in his prayer life. It's all about stepping away from the ego, which is the repository for all of this stuff that needs to be emptied out. Everything that we think we know reposes in our egoic consciousness, in that brain. Paradox will help us to empty that. Empty out what we think we know and what we say we believe. Because gratitude requires emptiness. If we're going to freely receive something, it's because we have acknowledged that there's an emptiness there that needs to be filled. Gratitude requires that beginner's mind. Richard Rohr talks about this brilliantly. The book that we did before the one we're doing now was called Just This. And he had a little passage there. He says, to begin to see with new eyes, we must observe and usually be humiliated by, I love that, the habitual way we encounter each and every moment. It is humiliating because we will see that we are well practiced in just a few predictable responses. Few of our responses are original, fresh, or naturally respectful of what is right in front of us. The most common human responses to a new moment are mistrust, cynicism, fear, knee-jerk reactions, a spirit of dismissal, and overriding judgmentalism. It is so discouraging when we have the courage to finally see that these are the common ways that the ego tries to be in control of the data, instead of allowing the moment to get some control over us and teach us something new. So it's about becoming self-aware. Self-aware enough to become, I guess, a bit humiliated by the fact that we are so close-minded. We will often fancy ourselves as broad-minded and well-read and all of this, but when it comes right down to it, how much bandwidth are we really operating on? It's kind of humiliating to find out it's just this narrow, narrow band. It's discouraging to see the way that we actually think and the way that we actually react to anything new that's put in our place. How defensive we get, how offended we become. Now, in truth, the way our minds work is an evolutionary adaptation. By that I mean, this is what we've learned since the time that we were still swinging in trees, if we ever swang in trees. Is it swang or swung? Swung in trees, swang in trees. But it's necessary for survival is the point. This way of thinking is necessary. The ability to quickly judge something, store that judgment, and have it in pigeonholed categorical boxes for us to pull back quickly, right? We need that quick retrieval. We need to be able to move in flight or fight really quickly. If, especially as hominids out in the savannah, if we always saw the wolf as if for the first time, we wouldn't be around very long, would we? We need to be able to categorize these things. And so that's important for us to be able to do. But the problem is that we have become so reliant upon, we've actually identified with this dualistic way of thinking, this judging ability that we have, which is why Jesus is so hard on judgment, right? That we never see anything as it really is. What we always see after the first time is just the mind's snapshot of that thing. What we think of that thing. We never really see the thing anymore. It's always just that snapshot. Microsoft did a study, kind of a longitudinal study because it goes way back before the mobile revolution began, mobile phone revolution. And what they were doing is they're trying to measure people's attention spans. So they put you in an EKG or EEG thing, you know, with all this stuff on your head. And they're watching the picture of your brain. And as they give you something new to focus on, they'd watch how the brain lights up. After about 12 seconds, the lights would go out. And they realized that person is no longer focused on this thing anymore. The mind had wandered away. And so their attention span was something around 12 seconds before year 2000 and the mobile phone revolution. Today, you know what that number has changed to? It's now 8 seconds. From 12 to 8. Guess what? A goldfish has a 9-second attention span. We are less than a goldfish right now. Now, don't ask me how they measured the goldfish attention span because it wasn't in the study, and that's probably what you're thinking because I was too. But we've lost our ability to focus on something. And so what does that do? That means we don't really consider anything new for very long at all. We flop back into our categorical pigeonholes, and we judge the thing, and then we move on. We don't have the capacity any longer to sit with something new, to sit in the hot seat, to sit in that disturbed and unknowing, uncertain place long enough to be able to go through the process as we really should. We need a balance, in other words. We have to be able to pull things down off the shelf quickly so that we can move quickly and make decisions quickly. But we also need to practice beginner's mind. We need to restore our ability to see things as if for the first time, and especially those things that we've seen before. But this is maybe a different instance of that, a different context of that. It's a different person displaying the same characteristics. And those need to have their own time in the sun in our minds so that we can actually go through life and have those moments of awe, to let something really stun us, to awe us, to present as new. And these are just everyday things, nothing spectacular. But the ability to let the world and our experiences do that for us. Now at Thanksgiving, why is this important? When we're talking about gratitude, why is this important? I think Dennis Prager nails it. And if you don't know Dennis Prager, he's one of our best thinkers in this country. He's a Jew, but wonderful thinker and very broad-based and interfaces with Christians very well. He writes this: how many times have you heard someone say that they want to make a better world? It is a noble sentiment, but very hard to achieve, right? Well, actually, it's quite easy. All we have to do is increase one human trait. This trait is so powerful that it alone can make people happier without working on their happiness and make them better. And by better, I mean more generous, more honest, more kind, and everything good without a single lesson in morality. So then, what is this one almost magical thing? Drum roll, please. It's gratitude. You can't be a happy person if you aren't grateful. And you can't be a good person if you aren't grateful. Almost everything good flows from gratitude. And almost everything bad flows from ingratitude. Let's begin with ingratitude. Here's a rule of life. Ingratitude guarantees unhappiness. It's as simple as that. There isn't an ungrateful, happy person on earth. And there isn't an ungrateful, good person on earth. And there are two reasons. Reason one is victimhood. Ingratitude always leads to or comes from victimhood. Ungrateful people, by definition, think of themselves as victims. And perceiving oneself as a victim or perceiving oneself as a member of a victim group may be the single biggest reason people hurt other people. From hurtful comments to mass murder. People who think of themselves as victims tend to believe that because they've been hurt by others, they can hurt others. And the second reason ungrateful people aren't good people is that ingratitude is always accompanied by anger. The ungrateful are angry, and angry people lash out at others. If ingratitude makes people unhappy and mean, then gratitude must make people happy and kind. And so it does. Think of the times that you have felt most grateful. Were they not always accompanied by a feeling of happiness? Weren't they also accompanied by a desire to be kinder to other people? The answer, of course, is yes. Grateful people aren't angry, and they also don't see themselves as victims. Here are two more rules of life. Rule number one, the less you feel entitled to, the more gratitude you will feel for whatever you get, and the happier you will be. Rule number two, the more you feel entitled to, the less happy you will be. Happiness, entitlement, gratitude, inversely proportional. As one goes up, the other goes down. It's just the way it is. There aren't too many things that are mutually exclusive in life. We always talk about both and. But here's one that seems to just blow out the other like light blows out dark. If you're entitled, you're not grateful. If you're not grateful, you can't be happy. Prager, I think, just nails it here. And I know it's gratitude, and we've heard it 1,000 times before. It has gotten to a place where it's just trite, it's a meme, it's a trope, whatever you want to call it. Be thankful, right? Count your blessings. Someone who tells me that, I want to slap them in the face, usually. I want to count the ways to hurt them, I guess would be the way that it would. Count your blessings. It's just like telling someone to just snap out of it if they're depressed. It's not the way it works. We don't just count our blessings and snap out of it. Because gratitude is more than mere thankfulness. Gratitude begins at thankfulness, but thankfulness, by definition, at least the way I would define it, is specific. It's specific on a particular gift that has been given that you're thankful for, but then it journeys on, if it does at all. Maybe your thankfulness ends with that gift, but if the thankfulness journeys on, then it becomes this non-specific attitude toward life. It just becomes a way of living life in that sense of thankfulness. In that sense of being grateful for everything that comes along. So how are we going to begin to develop this attitude of gratitude? How do we begin to live life, as Jesus would say, in kingdom? That is characterized by this ability to be awed, to be stunned, and to be grateful for even the smallest things that happen to us. Well, the first thing we need to do is to realize that we're working against our brain's natural function. This evolutionary adaptation, right, that is categorizing everything for us and working in the opposite direction. A little bit from Richard Rohr again, because he does a good job with this one as well. He says that brain studies have shown that we may be hardwired to focus on problems at the expense of a positive vision. How true is that for all of you? If you think about the time that your mind is wandering off the things you're doing, how often is it negative as opposed to positive content? How often do you focus on the bad things that are happening to you, the problems that you need to solve, the things that are still undone? It's just natural. It's the way that we are. It's another adaptation. And then brain studies have shown that we are hardwired to focus on problems at the expense of a positive vision. The human brain wraps around fear and problems like Velcro. We dwell on bad experiences long after the fact and spend vast amounts of energy anticipating what might go wrong in the future. Conversely, positivity and gratitude and simple happiness slide away like cheese on hot Teflon. Gotta love these images, right? Studies like the ones done by the neuropsychologist Rick Hansen show that we must consciously hold on to a positive thought or feeling for a minimum of 15 seconds before it leaves any imprint on the neurons. All right, so you have a positive thought, hold 15 seconds, or you're not going to imprint it anywhere. I thought that was interesting. A minimum 15 seconds before it leaves any imprint in the neurons. The whole dynamic, in fact, is called the Velcro Teflon model of the mind. We are more attracted to the problem than to the solution, you might say. Yes, it's that survival adaptation. But please don't take my word for it. Watch your own brain and emotions. You will quickly see that there is a toxic attraction to the negative. Whether it's a situation at work, a bit of incriminating gossip you overheard, or a sad development in the life of a friend. My gosh, what kind of programs do we like to watch? Reality TV. Is it ever about anything positive? Eesh. True freedom from this tendency is exceedingly rare, since we are ruled by automatic responses most of the time. The only way then to increase authentic spirituality is to deliberately practice actually enjoying a positive response and a grateful heart. And the benefits are very real. By following through on conscious choices, we can rewire our responses toward love, trust, and patience. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. This is how we increase our bandwidth of freedom, and it is surely the heartbeat of any authentic spirituality. So you're going to be doing your own sort of spiritual CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're reworking the way that you respond and then holding on to those positive responses for 15 seconds. It's the way the brain works, and it's on purpose. This is to keep us alive, but we're looking for balance. So what's the second thing that we need to do if we're going to establish this new attitude? We have to practice Thanksgiving. We actually have to practice it. And here, Diana Butler-Bass comes to our rescue. She says, gratitude is the strongest, clearest, most robust, and radical. Let me read that again. Gratitude is strongest, clearest, most robust, and radical when things are really hard. During a time of crisis, historian and author Diana Butler-Bass shares an experience of committing to a practice of gratitude. I did the only thing I could think of doing, simply saying thanks as I went through the day. I woke up with a brief prayer. Thank you that I am alive. I got coffee and breakfast. Thank you for the food this day. I looked out the window. Thank you for sunshine. I went into my office. Thank you for words, for work. Do you see what she's doing here? She's having a very difficult time. She's got this oppressive feeling. Maybe it's morphed into a depressive feeling. She's just tightened chest and everything just feels. And what's she doing? She's finding herself just out loud, thanking God for every little bit of her day that we would normally just roll through without a second thought. So important to see. Thanks as I went through the day. Woke up with thanks that I'm alive. Thanks for this food. Thank you for sunshine. Thank you for words and for work. Even when it comes to thankfulness, sometimes you have to take what you can get. I took nothing for granted. Over the weeks with my hapless prayers, I discovered something quite unexpected. Gratitude, like interest, compounds. This simple form of giving thanks made me pay attention and start looking for particular reasons to be grateful. There would always be grounds for ingratitude, always. Seeking out the small things for which I could give thanks, however, changed my field of spiritual and emotional vision. I learned not to focus on what I was lacking. Only practice does this over and over and over again. You literally are rewiring the neurons in your mind. But gratitude is not a form of passive acceptance or complicity. Rather, it is the capacity to stare doubt, loss, chaos, despair right in the eye and say, I am still here. But being grateful itself does not fix anything. Pain, suffering, injustice, these things are all real. They do not go away. Gratitude, however, invalidates the false narrative that these things are the sum total of human existence. Did you get that? The things don't go away. But by you continuing to practice gratitude, invalidates the false narrative in our minds, or that is being fed into us by all of the media that we consume, that these negative things are the sum total of human existence, that despair is the last word. Gratitude gives us a new story. It opens our eyes to see that every life is, in unique and dignified ways, graced. The lives of the poor, the cast-offs, the sick, the jailed, the exiles, the abused, the forgotten, as well as those in more comfortable physical circumstances. Your life, my life, we all share in the ultimate gift, life itself, together, right now. What does Paul say? Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say, rejoice. And then a few verses later on, I have learned to be content in all my circumstances. We could say he learned to be grateful in all his circumstances. And this is a matter of being able to see the most insignificant things in our lives that we would normally not be grateful for or even notice at all, but to actually start to notice them, to see them, and then to be grateful for them. I found this article that had a bunch of tiny, they called it tiny stories of gratitude. I wanted to read just a few of them. And this comes from the Times, New York Times. We asked Times readers to tell us what they were thankful for this year in fewer than 100 words. That's always tough. I always love Mark Twain. I would have written a shorter book if I had more time, right? So in 100 words or less, you got to write a little story of what you're thankful for. We received nearly 1,500 entries that focused on everything from large moments of gratitude, like a life-saving drug or the birth of a child, to the joys of the mundane, like ice cream and exercise. Here are a few of the responses we received. And this one is a neighborly neighbor. Your hello waves, your bouncy gait as you mow our lawn since it's right next to yours. Your spicy chicken curry when our third was born. Your stop when my son's green ball rolled into the street and I wasn't there. Your giant trampoline filled with little feet from every house. Your send the kids over so I could sip coffee in silence. The passing down of the dinosaur costume you made, a pink dress, puzzles, how you thought of me, looked out for me and my family in this disconnected world. The kindness of the cashier. I work from home, taking twice weekly breaks to walk to the market. I talk to Mirella, the cashier, as she rings up my purchases. I ask about her grandson. She knows about my kids, who she has seen grown from stroller to college. This year we check in about her sister and my mother, who both have Alzheimer's. The brutal disease is robbing us both. And as part-time caregivers, the sad weight of it all can be a lot. But twice a week, someone I've never seen outside the market checks in with me, and I'm grateful. too tight soccer shorts. We gather at the field at 7:30 a.m., enough time to apply wraps, balms, and braces and roll out tired limbs. Our bellies, stuffed into our favorite English football jerseys, overhang the elastic of our shorts. The game begins, and the thump of football is punctuated by the usual insults. The goal is over there, Mike. For an hour, all is forgotten. Last night's shouting match with my wife, the dwindling bank balance, the polite rejection at work. We are together, playing a game that we love. I'm grateful for old men in too tight soccer shorts. I'm an armpit deep in a swimming pool with 50 other water aerobic women of a certain age, kicking as high as I can while pumping my water weights down as far as each will go. Harder, the leader yells, higher. We yelp and obey. Our group of women faithfully stomp, kick, punch, and leap because we love it here. We love each other and support each other. We have seen the dark side of life and are here to live and laugh and love every move. There is no fat shaming here. I'm mighty grateful for it all. An honest repairman. It was a tough week, and I was exhausted as I drove home from the airport. Suddenly, the engine just cut off. I drifted to a stop on the shoulder of a busy highway. I called a tow truck driver, and my car ended up at a nearby repair shop. This was going to be expensive. I called a cab and got home. The next morning, the repair shop called and said the bill was $10. What? Turns out I had run out of gas. Not broken down. He could have charged me anything, but I found an honest repairman. And then finally, the day after you died in May, a mourning dove began visiting my backyard for the first time. He often appeared after I sat at the wooden table, perching on a nearby branch as his small feathered body vibrated into a series of coos. I jokingly named him TJ, an inverse of your name. And whether he came by coincidence, as you would have argued, or a spiritual visitation, as my mystical mother suggested, he stayed for several weeks. Talking to him filled me with gratitude and reminded me that you live on within me and everyone who loves you. See, once we can open up to these everyday details, once we can empty our preconceptions that would keep us from seeing these everyday details as they actually are, then we can begin to regain our beginner's mind. Then we can begin to see what is right here and right now. We can then experience moments as enough, that this moment actually is enough. If we're fully invested in it, if we're fully immersed in it, if we're fully experiencing it. And we'll realize that this moment is a gift we could never give ourselves. This moment we're having right now. How would you give this to yourselves? How would you engineer it? This moment has been 18 years in the making, and here we are. And the feeling that we have of comfortability and familiarity and acceptance didn't happen overnight, and you can't engineer it. You simply show up for it over and over again. This is, by definition, the opposite of entitlement. We don't earn this. It is freely given to us and freely received. And if all of that is true, then why is it all still so hard? Why is it so hard for us to just do this, just to fall into it? Well, obviously, as we said, we're fighting our own human nature. We're fighting the acceptance of our adaptation of our egoic mind. And we're dealing with life on a fear-based way. We're dealing life in a scarcity-based way. And fear of that sort creates blockages that keep us from being open and empty and vulnerable enough to see the moment as the moment is with gratitude. Now, Jesus teaches us how to break through this fear-based thinking. And he has, I've just gleaned out 5 triggers that he is teaching us how to deal with. And if you take a look at your handouts, they're up on the screen. The first is going to be from Matthew 11, starting at verse 2. And we're dealing here with expectation. Expectation is a huge roadblock. It's a brick wall. But look what happens here. Now when John, this is John the Baptist, he was imprisoned because he spoke truth to power to the king and ended up there. When John imprisoned heard of the works of Christ, he sent words by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the expected one? Or shall we look for someone else?" Now notice what is happening here, because John was most likely an Essene. He was one of those who went out with the group, formed their own communities, kept them absolutely pure. And what they were waiting for, and there he's using the exact title here, they were waiting for the expected one. The expected one was the one who was to come in the guise of their Messiah, who is going to lead them back in to occupy the land and re-sanctify it. So John is seeing his cousin Jesus as the expected one, and he's expecting him to do what needs to be done, which is take political power, be able to start driving the Romans out. Are you the expected one, or shall we look for someone else? Because he's not seeing Jesus do any of the things that he expected him to do, that their community expected of the expected one. Jesus answered and said to them, these are his emissaries, "Go and report to John what you hear and see. The blind receive sight, and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them." And of course, he's quoting here from Isaiah, and he knows that his cousin John isn't going to miss that fact. He's quoting him scripture, which was the precursor to the Messiah. All these things were going to happen, and they are happening. Jesus is basically saying, you've got expectations? Hey, look around. See what's happening right now. It's all here. It's not in your head. Nothing lasting exists in your head. It's all around you. See what is happening here, and the questions you have will answer themselves if you're paying attention. It's only your agenda, it's only your expectation overlaid on the moment that keeps presence and gratitude at bay. Can you see, really see what is happening here? Can you immerse yourself and let everything else go? Insecurity. Look at John 14, 8 and 9. Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it's enough for us." And Jesus said to him, "How long have I been with you, and yet you have not come to know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father." How can you say, "Show us the Father"? He's got to be a bit irritated at this point, right? But that's the insecurity. Thomas asks him the way. "I am the way." Philip asks, "Show us the Father." If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. They don't get it. He understands that. But he's trying to let them know that once you've experienced who is really walking with you, the expectations that you have go right out the window. If you can just really be present to who is walking with you. When you know that, how can you lose? How can you be lost? How can you be ungrateful? How can you be insecure? Once you really have completely experienced the nature of who this God is. Envy, Luke 15. This is the prodigal. Now his older son of the prodigal was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. And he summoned one of the servants and began inquiring what these things could be. And the servant said to him, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound." But the older brother became angry and was not willing to go in because and then his father came out and began pleading with him. But he answered and said to his father, "Look, for so many years I have been serving you and have never neglected a command of yours, and yet you have never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your wealth with prostitutes, you killed a fattened calf for him?" And the father said to him, "Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, for this brother of yours was dead and has begun to live, and was lost and has been found. Envy is the fear of not getting what someone else has and you want or need, right? But what part of everything don't we understand? Everything that God has is already ours. By definition, envy is absolutely nonsensical in a spiritual realm because there's nothing left to envy. Everything is already ours. We have it all. Freely given. Grateful if we're paying attention. How about entitlement? Luke 7. Now when the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, this is a story where he is invited into the meal with Simon the Pharisee, and the worst sinner in the village comes, makes her way through the crowd, backs up to Jesus and his feet because they're reclining at the table, and is crying over his feet and drying the feet with his tears and touching him. To be touched by a woman, of course, was verboten in that society for a man. And to be touched by a sinner was to become unclean yourself, all right? So, when the Pharisees who had invited him saw all this going on, he said to himself, Simon, if this man were a prophet, he would know in what sort of person this woman is who is touching him, that she is a sinner. And Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he replied, say it, teacher. A moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. When they were unable to repay, he graciously forgave them both. So which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one he forgave more. And he said to him, you have judged correctly. Entitlement. It's interesting that Jesus says that the highest love is the love of the enemy. To love someone that you don't even like, don't have any feelings for. To love someone that can give you absolutely no advantage. In fact, is going to do the opposite. But the highest form of gratitude is for that which has been earned. The things that you think that you have earned, if you can still be grateful for them, that's the highest form of gratitude. I earned this paycheck. Can I still be grateful for the job that I have that gave me this check? Or is it just I am entitled to it? All these things that we think we've earned, whether it's our spiritual salvation or anything, can we still be grateful for it? This is what is going to negate entitlement. There are things that we earn in this life, things that we contractually need to be able to expect out of life, or life doesn't work. But can we still be grateful and realize that all we're really doing here is, rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, right? We don't really have any control over where the ship is going, and all the resources have been given to us. We get to rearrange them, and that's great. Can we still be grateful? Can we see through that? And then finally, victimization, John 5. A man was there who had been ill for 38 years. This is where he goes to the pool of Bethesda, right? When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been a long time in that condition, he said to him, do you wish to get well? Sounds like a trick question, doesn't it? The sick man answered him, Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me. And Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your pallet, and walk. Do you wish to get well? I mean, it's not a trick question. Heck yeah. I've been here for 38 years. I do want to get well. No, what does he do? He starts complaining about the fact that he's got no one to help him, which means he has no community. He has no friends. He has no family. He's completely alone. And he still sees himself as a victim. Always a victim. And as long as he's pointing out there, he's not seeing where the real transformation needs to take place. A victim believes that they have no choice. Victimhood is the state of having no choice. Jesus is telling us we are not victims. Pick up your pallet and walk. Make a choice. Choose something. Don't pretend you're paralyzed. Walk and find a reason to be grateful. Now, we're not talking about literal things. If literally paralyzed, yeah, that's different. But this is a metaphor, remember, for our spiritual condition. Spiritually, we are not victims. Spiritually, interiorly, we can make a choice. We are the only ones blocking ourselves when it's spiritual. And victimization will always keep us under. Jesus is always pointing in the same direction. He's telling us to overcome our expectations and our preconceptions with the awareness, with the presence that we can cultivate that will take us to beginner's mind, the ability to see things as if for the first time. He's telling us to overcome our insecurity with intimacy, with deep connection, with opening up and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough that we can see we are not alone. We don't have to fear the dark of night by ourselves. Overcome envy with the realization of our spiritual abundance, that everything that the Father has is already ours, that everything we need is already within. The kingdom is within. There's nothing out there to acquire. In fact, the only way we're going to be able to get to this place is to let go of the things that are blocking us. Overcome entitlement with that dependency, with that vulnerability, the ability to be grateful for even the things that we believe that we have earned ourselves, and still see the resources that's flowing to us from a larger hand. And to overcome our victimization with simple choice, with action, taking action, making a choice in a direction to move and see what happens, because it will connect us to community. And once we're connected to community, there is no victimization. And if we were to do all of these things that Jesus is talking about, it's going to create in us the same sensation. When we do live in awareness, when we practice awareness, intimacy, a sense of abundance rather than scarcity, dependence, vulnerability, when we are choosing action and motion and connection, what does all that feel like? If you were to do all that, what does it feel like? Well, it feels like it's enough. When we are living this way, the moments feel like they're enough. Enoughness is the feeling that we call gratitude. That's what gratitude is. When we have experienced a moment as enough, nothing lacking, nothing needing to be added, that's gratitude. And gratitude feels like what we call happiness, fulfillment, meaning, purpose. If you think about it, gratitude is an umbrella term. It covers and it includes all the positive emotions, and it excludes all the rest, the negative ones. Think about it. You can't be grateful and depressed. You can't be grateful and angry or stressed, anxious, envious, entitled, or victimized at the same time as you're grateful. Can't do it. It's literally impossible. Gratitude, enoughness, is what kingdom feels like. It's what kingdom is. It's our original default position before we knew we were naked, is to live in this kind of enoughness, in this kind of gratitude that felt like happiness, that felt like everything. And if we're not feeling grateful, then we're not in kingdom. It's that simple. Seek first gratitude, to paraphrase Jesus, and all else is added. Now, there is a catch. There's always a catch, right? You can't create gratitude. You can't seek it directly, as we talked about before. You can't count your blessings into it. It doesn't work that way. Gratitude is what happens when we begin to see life around us in our daily moments with beginner's mind, as if for the first time, like a child, and let go of all the complexity that we generate in our heads, all the calculations and the plans and the judgments, and just see and accept the moment as enough. We were born grateful, but then we grew out of it. But we can fall back in. We can fall back in love, and we can fall back in gratitude. And of course, we won't feel grateful all the time. Nobody does, not even Jesus. What was he doing on the cross? My God, why have you abandoned me? He wasn't feeling grateful at that moment. But he came right back into it again, didn't he? If we can come right back to the awareness, the intimacy, the abundance, the dependence, vulnerability, choice, action, connection that we're not feeling at the moment that we've lost our gratitude, that enoughness and that gratitude will happen again. They go together. They are causations of each other. This is what the second half of life is all about. Practicing presence is at the core of gratitude. And it's all about progress, not perfection. 51%, right? Just one more than half. 51%. If we can move into that place of 51%, we're actually changing our mailing address. We're changing the nature of our character. And this one thing encompasses all things, changes everything, just as Jesus said it would. Seek first kingdom, and all else is added. Seek first gratitude, all else is added. How do you seek gratitude? Not directly, but by establishing this attitude in life, this way of seeing life. Practicing presence through a beginner's mind. Allowing yourself to become an empty cup again. To be able to see God in your grocery store clerk. To be able to literally see what you've been missing. And to absolutely find out that it's just enough for you. And it always has been. Let's pray. Father, this is what Thanksgiving is really all about. It's a time for us collectively, in our families and in our nation, to stop for a moment and remind ourselves of all that we have that we could never give ourselves. All that we have that is not earned, even if we think it is, that has been freely given. Help us to not let these kind of holidays become so commercialized that they lose the impact of that time out. To be able to sit back and just look around the table and be so grateful that you have a seat here. That these people accept you. That you are accepted into. So that we can take these moments and then move them into the rest of our lives so that they can become a living attitude of the way that we see life. Each moment unfolding as it does. Being grateful because we're immersed in it and we're seeing it as if for the first time. Awed and stunned and grateful. You are new every morning, Father. You are new around every corner. Help us to see life with that newness, the ability to bring us back into our most default position, our beginner's mind, our childlike wonder, and our gratitude. So thank you, Father, for everything. Never let us forget we can only love because you loved us first. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's all stand.